Here we are, Steve Snyder's The Vault. We have the Rolls Royce Owners Club of SoCal region and the Classic Car Club of America, SoCal region. The 1962 Studebaker Hawk. The 1947 Cadillac Series 75 limousine. The Cadillac limousine.
If I wouldn't have bought this car, I would have been up there. Well, in this car, I mean, it's totally restored. I mean, you know, if a ratty would be underrun or one with some edge to it.
Here's a 1930 LaSalle
What's your
Model 340 V8 engine with a big floodlight on it. There's a dual windshield. This is for the passengers in the back, so they don't get splattered by bugs. Lots of room in the back. Trunk rack and gas tank. It's the Hilbert Museum of Art. This is Randy Ema's shop. He's got this mosaic.
So he put it together for banks back in the day. And he put mosaics on the banks, huh?
These were mosaic murals for Home Savings Bank branches commissioned by Howard F. Amundsen.
And really all the, you know, and then you've got the mirror image of the king and queen standing, looking where you are standing. So there's a lot of visual puns going on in that painting. Part of the 20th century, meaning that they were looking at scenes, but they were looking at the way that, it was almost a scientific way of how color, how our brains see it break up into these swatches of color. But when you
Do you think it's tougher to do watercolors than oil?
Everybody else does, but I don't. I don't think it's no different. No different for me. And some people say, what's the, you know, they say, oh, that looks like so much fun. You know, it isn't. It all takes discipline and work to be committed to go in your studio and paint.
Yeah. This is Tim Clark, the artist.
Mary said, you get good, we'll give you a show. So, yes, only have one when you hear it. And she said, why do you keep insisting on having those other three? I said, because I want to have cuatro cincos.
This is a modern pointillist. And I love the way that she puts, you know, the various colors in the sky. Skies are not, if you look at the sky, if you look at clouds, they're not just one color, right? They're all the colors. We think it's the thrifty drugstore in Los Angeles, because that's where she mostly lived and worked. But this is what we collect here at the Hilbert Museum. This is kind of like the epitome of what we show here is images of everyday life in California. He jumps in to save her, and there's this dramatic standoff against the cliff. She designed and drew that whole scene. So, and at a time when the men in the studio thought that women should be relegated to maybe, doing fairies and flowers and things like that, she did this very dramatic scene. So this is actually from her student days, and a rather surreal woman with a cups on her head. That's a very recent painting. To the Andy Warhol in drag here, which is, when Mark bought this, he surprised me. And I was like, Mark, you're going out on the edge here. But it's really cool. And then this drawing here of the great emancipation writer and activist Frederick Douglass was done by a Chapman graduate. His name is Ba Simba. He was born in the Republic of Congo, but he moved here and he graduated from Chapman. And he used to come in here and he would spread out his paper on the benches and he would sit in that. She was kind of in competition with Rita Hayworth for a long time at the studio, and Rita was more willing to do what the studio wanted her to do, and Linda wasn't, and so she didn't really have a success at 20th Century Fox Studios. So there's this through line in California of so many of our artists came out here during the Depression and on into the war years. And then he became the head of the art department at Fox, and actually won an Oscar in the early 1960s. Dylan, the complete unknown. Is it good? Yeah. I want to see it.
Very good.
Yeah, I know she lost her husband during the pandemic, and so she's known for doing works that show people with tattoos. And so this is a young ballerina. And Janice gave her a tattoo on her back of a living dove. She's reaching for the dead dove, but she can't quite reach it because, the artist is Alexander Harmer. And this was painted around 1894. And it is a scene from the Ramona legend. So you might know the book, Ramona. It's kind of California's Romeo and Juliet story. And of course in Hemet, I believe is it Hemet where they have the Ramona pageant? So every year they enact, this famous Romeo Juliet. But this is an example of paintings that were done during the Great Depression, and so they were kind of depressed. It was showing the hardworking life. Here, this is our works on paper. You can come back and explore this anytime. We've got. I had a group of Disney animators in here a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to bring them in here, and I usually start talking about this one, and they all gravitated over there, because these are animation backgrounds by the great Irv Weiner. And he didn't work for Disney, he worked for Warner Brothers, so some of those madcap, the one on the left almost looks like Jetsons, but that was not Warner Brothers, so it's probably some modernist cartoon that he did. San Francisco, Mark says he knows that theater, which is, I guess, now an X-rated theater. I said, Mark, I know that because there was an article in a women's magazine about her in her 50s. For the 10,000 designers, companies that were competing with each other. And so to differentiate from each other, they hired the best industrial designers. And so this show happens to be about novelty radios, which are radios that are made to look like either a celebrity, a cartoon character, in the case of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, A Christmas Carol, the word radio, or just something else like a Swiss chalet or a bunch of books on a shelf, a baseball. So we call these novelty radios. This in the center. And he loves California. He's always driving around California, and he comes upon scenes that You and I, One Dalmatians was the first movie they did using Xerox machines to copy the outlines. I'm not quite sure how they did it, but...
This is Mary Blair designed.
And then Jungle Book was the last movie that won't. The cells were actually used to photograph the movie, and you can tell it's a cell because it's got on the back of the plastic looking forward. So you had to paint backwards. And then they would take stacks of these cells to the photography room at night.